Welcome to the Black Marriage and Family Therapy Matters podcast, where we connect Black families to Black therapists. On Mondays, you will receive direct therapeutic support from a licensed therapist or professional connected to the mental health field. They will provide therapeutic and educational resources to help you have a healthier relationship with your family members. On Wednesdays, you will receive direct tips and resources to help you get through the stuck places that prevent many people from having the relationships with their families and significant others that they desire. On Fridays, we want you to visit our blog, which can be found at www.blackmftmatters.com, which holds additional resources and action steps that you can begin implementing immediately to improve your relationships. This is necessary because we love that you are listening, but we want you to take action too. While you are there, please grab our A to Z Relationship Bootcamp and be provided with the skills you need to immediately communicate better within your relationships. Please note that while the therapists on podcasts are therapists, they do not serve as your therapist unless you have signed a confidential agreement with them confirming that relationship. Thank you in advance for listening, and we hope you are inspired. All right, it's time for the show. Here is your host, Dr. Connie Omari.
Hello, and welcome to the Black Marriage and Family Therapy Matters podcast, where we connect Black families to Black therapists. Today, we have an awesome guest, Dr. Eric A. Williams. Hi, Dr. Williams.
Hello. It is a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you. If you don't mind, I'm going to give my audience just a little bit of information about you, then we'll get right started, okay?
Absolutely. Go for it.
All right. Dr. A. Williams is a Christian husband of 14 years and father of 11-year-old identical twin boys diagnosed with autism and a 3-year-old neurotypical daughter. He is credentialed as both a licensed professional counselor supervisor and licensed marriage and family therapist right here in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He is also a veteran paratrooper of the 82nd Airborne Division. He works on Fort Bragg as a military and family life counselor in his private practice, Coastal Family Services, PLLC, right off of Morganton Road, and serves as an online adjunct faculty member at both Tarun University Worldwide and Huntington University. He brands himself as a relationship expert, specializing in couples and marriage issues with an emphasis on African American relationships. He also has a social media presence on Facebook, known as the Coastal Family Services and Thriving Love for New Lovers, and on Instagram at Purpose and Hope Diller. He blogs for various media outlets and has been featured on major sites like Pop Sugar, Yahoo, and Site Central. He recently published an online course for couples titled Soulmate Connections: Loving, Living, and Winning Together, for those looking to excel at relationships and enabling them to build a healthy village. Wow, Dr. Williams, that is impressive.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
I think that is really the biggest thing is that I realize that when I work with individuals, I work with couples, that is just something that has really jumped out for me. Just to give you a little bit of background about my history and how interesting this has been for me. When I grew up, I didn't necessarily come from a two-parent home. My parents divorced when I was 13, and so and a lot of the couples I saw around me, they weren't married either. So I didn't have the best model. So when God spoke to me and said, "Hey, no, this is what you're going to be doing," I jumped on it, and it's been great ever since. So for me, the idea that I'm even working with couples, sometimes it amazes me because I didn't grow up in that. But to be able to give it back and see that God is working through me to do it, has been nothing short of a blessing for me, and hopefully a blessing for all the couples I work with.
That's awesome. That is awesome. There's nothing like using our own pain to connect with people and being able to create opportunities for others to have what we were lacking ourselves. So I think that's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know a lot about your work, so I can't wait to get into some of that as well, because you do a really good job. in what you do.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And kind of, really what I'd like to bring this direction, take this to the direction of, is toxic masculinity for today.
Sure.
Yeah, because it's such a big issue, especially in the African American community. And Dr. Williams, I think especially in situations like yourself, when it sounds like you did not grow up with a male figure in the home. And so it sounds like, well, just tell me, like, do you have any thoughts about what toxic masculinity means and how that might be influenced by growing up outside of a two-parent home?
The interesting thing about toxic masculinity is even when we describe it as toxic, everybody's or every male's sense of masculinity, they have their similarities, but they all see them a little bit differently. So even when we talk about toxic masculinity, there's a difference in how many of them look at it. And some of them, believe it or not, believe they're being very unique in what they do, and it turns out to be a lot of them embracing some of the same things. So I work quite a bit with couples, and sometimes I have just males coming into counseling. What I realize is that their sense of masculinity, instead of, for me, I don't necessarily call it toxic. I try to soften the blow a little bit to kind of keep them engaged, but it's really more so it's an underdeveloped sense. And when we peel back the layers and realize where they derive this from, oftentimes their stories are very similar to mine, where you didn't grow up with the best model, or you may not have grown up with a model at all, and you kind of develop it as you go, or you develop it from other people, maybe your peers who may not know either. So a lot of times toxic masculinity just looks like, it's almost like self-preservation, kind of community, where I want to be what I think I should be to fit into a certain situation that doesn't necessarily play out very well, and it makes a toxic relationship as a result.
Wow, I love that, and I don't think I've ever heard it put that way. And it makes a lot of sense, because when I think of something toxic, I think of it as poisonous, or almost like a combination of something really bad. But growing up without a dad, like, that's not really bad, that's underdeveloped. Like, we're underdeveloped. We're missing something from our developmental stage, which impacts how we show up in the world. Absolutely.
And so what happens then is, to just ask that just a little bit more, is then we start listening to the music, or we see things in the media, our ideas about maybe certain celebrities. We can derive a sense of identity from that, and that in a sense, it's not that I think people strive to have a toxic sense of masculinity. It becomes toxic really in the way that it plays out in their everyday life, and that's what really makes it toxic. So it's not that I want to be toxic, it's just that it manifests toxic based on the relationships that I have with the rest of the larger society. So and helping people realize that is really kind of what I enjoy doing.
Wow, that's awesome, Dr. Williams. And I just think it's so natural for us to kind of go into this, because you just told something to me that I didn't even know, which is that your father actually wasn't in the home. And you recall at the end of 2019 was a very difficult time, I think, for both of us. I lost my dad in October, and he also was not a major part in my life. And it's interesting, because you reached out to me and you sent your condolences, and I said thank you very much. And I think maybe a month later or so, I found that you lost your dad.
Absolutely. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something that I really don't share a lot, and very few people know. But the relationship I had with my dad was one where before my parents separated, before they divorced, I could not stand my dad at all. And there was plenty of times I said that to my mom, just because of the nature of their relationship. It was very tumultuous, alcoholism, just not there emotionally and in the family. So I just kind of grew up kind of resenting a good deal until I was about 13. Well, they divorced. We had a better relationship after they divorced, and where I would see my dad, go visit, because we lived across town, we would still go visit, and the relationship became better as we got older. And so it began to repair itself, but that was, for me, there were still those old wounds that are never really healed. And it's something that I never really talked about, really with anyone. And I realized for a lot of guys, that is very much our story, where we have these wounds from these past relationships, and we don't necessarily seek out, help. And it drives how we interact with our own kids. It drives how we interact with our spouses or any other relationship that we may have. So this is, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think in a lot of ways, whether you have a father in the home or not, you can still pick up some underdeveloped ideas of what it means to be a man and what it means to be a father. And I see that quite often.
Yeah, I bet. And I know this is about, toxic masculinity or underdeveloped masculinity. And also, you're speaking from a male's perspective, but you hit on so many things as well as a female that I think I guess, growing up in a household without a father, my situation was very similar. But, I think I attracted to, for a very, very long time, a certain type of man that fed that narrative.
Right.
And I'm wondering, do you see that a lot in your practice as well?
Yeah. And it's interesting. I just had a couple just last night that we brought this up. So one of the things I'd like to ask initially is, for couples, is when you first came into this relationship, or just in general, what is your idea of a healthy relationship? What is your idea of what a husband and what a wife should do? Idea, and then where did you get it from? And the female that I was talking to last night actually mentioned that she was looking for someone that was more like her dad, and that's what she wanted. And in return, I hear oftentimes a lot of guys are saying in that same dynamic, they don't feel like they measure up, because that person, that image that the female or the wife may be looking for is not something they're accustomed to, because they didn't grow up seeing it, whereas she may have. And I think, what you just mentioned is something very key, is that a lot of females, they do grow up with that. I think for me, being a father of a daughter, my 3-year-old, these things that I think about is like, how do I not make the same mistakes? My daughter's narrative to be, I didn't have that relationship. So I do hear that, what you just mentioned, and that is something that oftentimes when I work with couples, I try to let them know that the work that we do is not about just getting you to be in a better place. I'm thinking about the legacy. I'm thinking about your kids, and I don't think you can share the same narrative that you're sharing today. If you didn't see this example from your parents or other elders, I don't want that to be their story too. So the work we do today is important for their sake as well.
Very good. Very, very good. Well, thank you for that. So we're going to kind of change the title of this then from toxic masculinity to underdeveloped masculinity, just in light of the wisdom that you've just shared with all of us. So what is the one thing that you wish Black families knew? Like, I know there's a lot, and you've been doing this for a while, but if you could just pick one thing, what do you wish we knew about underdeveloped masculinity?
I think and I'm kind of bringing this from a couple standpoint, because again, that's kind of, my mind is always thinking in relation. So
couples, yeah.
So one of the things I always think about is when males, and I'm gonna kind of go from both sides, but for a lot of males that come into just their sense of adulthood, their sense of being a man, to be aware that who you are and how great you are as a man is not something that, and I guess for both sides, it's not something that you can self-proclaim and say, look, I'm the greatest man in the world. I can be, I'm the best husband. I'm the husband of the year, or there's no better husband than me, because that is a title that can only be granted to you based on the feedback you get from your partner. So everything that you bring to a relationship is very relational. So you can have a million great ideas, but the one idea to hold on to is that it's not so much is it the idea a great idea, it's more so does this work for us. And so that'd be the one thing I would employ for both male and female. Really is, you can have great ideas, but the real question is, does this work for my relationship, or does it not work? And that means really closely scrutinizing everything, every detail that you've ever learned about what it means to be in a healthy relationship. Whether you watch Dr. Phil, you listen to Ayana, you listen to Brene Brown, whomever, the real question is, when I bring it back to my relationship, does this work versus does it not work? More so than is it right or is it wrong?
Very good. And, just piggybacking off of that, because I know I've been very guilty of like going to the experts, like all those people that you just mentioned, I have listened to and taken that in. And that's easy to do because, when you haven't had it, you're searching for that connection. Somebody please tell me. But sometimes even that doesn't work.
Absolutely.
like if it doesn't work for my relationship, yeah.
Exactly. And then a lot of times when we look to these experts, because I feel the pressure when couples come in and see me, we look to these experts because we want someone in a lot of ways to verify that what I'm saying is true, that what I'm saying is right, and this is what you need to be doing so we can be better. And the reality a lot of times is these experts have a lot of great ideas, but like a lot of times I like to say, well, the expert has great ideas, but they don't know your relationship. And so the idea is take the information, bring it back to the relationship, and then see if it works. Have a discussion about this information more so than just implementing it without the other person actually co-signing on it. So that's always something that I try to really, look at. I don't want to shun experts because I guess in some way, you and I as counselors, they look at us as experts too.
Yeah.
So we have.
I just read your bio and you've been at Pop Sugar, Yahoo, Psych Central. You are an expert. Yeah.
So the real idea is just to make sure that people look, take this information home. Don't do it because I said it. Do it because you feel like it works for you. And that's kind of the way, a lot of couples, that's the biggest advice I have. The one thing I think they should do.
Well, that's good. I think that's very humble of you. Because a lot of time, being the expert in things, it's easy for us to say, this is the solution,
Yes.
And I know even in business, being in business, is, people want results. People want to know what will work. But I think there's just so true and authentic of you to bring in the importance of, just let's see if this works for you. And if it doesn't, that's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is there a specific area around this that you would say Black families that you work with or Black marriages that you work with, where they're just really struggling?
This is going to sound kind of weird, but I think the one focus that I like to get couples to get to, especially for Black couples, is it's okay to say, I don't know what I'm doing, because people can get to that place in a relationship, then we can grow. And both people believe, or one person really believes, I know what I'm doing, and you just got to come around to seeing this my way. And so we peel back the layers, as we were talking about before, say, hey, you know what you saw as a kid growing up, the ideas about what a healthy relationship was, or what you did not see, and then when you start talking about how you develop your own sense of what you're supposed to be as a man or a woman, you realize that, hey, you know what, I really didn't have anything. I said, well, where'd you get it from? Like, I really don't know. Some of us on TV, some of it I just thought up. Then I'll get both of them to realize and say, hey, you know what? Is it fair to say that you really don't know how to be the husband or the wife that this person needs to be? And they both agree that point. I'm like, all right, great. Now we can start, because until we can get to that place, we can't move. And I think both people just have to be humble enough and wise enough to just say, look, I don't know what I'm doing. And I want to get some help. And I want to be able to be the best husband or wife I can be for you.
Wow. Awesome. I'm wondering, a lot of times when I hear about things that like this that come up now, I wonder how much of that might play into our history. Because I can imagine if you would get whipped, you better know something, about how to solve something or whatever, if that was the consequence.
Absolutely. And especially for a male. So kind of go back to the whole being a man, and, for a man to say, I don't know anything, like, I don't know how to do this, by nature, we're all been, I say most of us at least, have been socialized to be, fix it. type guy.
Oh yeah.
So you got to fix it. So I don't
Uh-huh.
really care what you might be telling me, even if you saying, look, I just need you to listen to me. I'm trying to fix that problem, and that may not be what you need. And so, or I've heard many times where the idea is, this is just what, I just do what, men do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a problem because I'm not open to the idea of listening, because I've identified with the general role of what a man should be, or what a black man should be, more so than the idea of what a husband to my spouse. So we kind of trying to shift that paradigm a little bit. It's not just a black man. I'm a husband to, my wife. I'm a husband to, So I think that's the biggest thing.
And like you said, a lot of us are simply just growing up in households where that wasn't there.
Yeah.
You don't have anybody to teach you. You don't have anybody to show you, and it's hard.
It is, and it's okay to just, on one hand, we like to say, yes, especially in the black community, yeah, that's where I came from. I didn't necessarily see this, I'm kind of, I kind of came up through, had a rough childhood with tough love, and I got to this place now, I kind of, pick myself up, put myself up on bootstraps, and that's great to an extent, but relationships, you're really only as good as your spouse and your looks, and so sometimes
you're only as good as your weakest link.
Exactly.
Yeah. I've always wondered, and I'm not perfect myself, but when you pull one of your partners down, you're pulling yourself down, really.
Absolutely. I can tell you now, I was horrible being a husband.
No, you weren't, Dr. Williams.
I was horrible. Like, some of these things I'm talking about, I'm like, yeah, I did that. I was that guy. So I had to learn, like, what does it mean to really be, a husband? Because I didn't really say it. I didn't know. And it was, just time and both my head enough time to realize, going to counseling too. So maybe we can throw this in there too, that I think black couples and black men should know is that, we do need to go to counseling.
Yes.
I forgot now, like, I went to counseling to learn, but I got to do things better.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because since you gave your vulnerable moment, I'll share. You'll probably think this is so funny. I used to date nothing but like drug dealers, like straight up, like really tough, like gangster thug type men. And I'm not knocking those men. I love my black people, but to me, that was, I guess, toxic masculinity. Let's not even put any, adjective for it. It was masculinity. Like they, were tough. They were respected, even though it was feared respect. They had money, and I thought that was living.
And that's it. Like, honestly, so I have spent time with, like, brothers, have sold drugs, and I've just been around a lot of people that I probably shouldn't have been around, that if I had stayed in that setting, I probably would not be on this podcast right now. There'd probably be some docuseries on Netflix at some point, but so that's a good thing. But I think that's kind of what you were saying, is we come from these places because this is kind of what we know, it's what we see. We know, and I think a lot of times what I hear when I see couples come in, I see these young guys coming to counseling, I'm looking at them like, man, you could really be so much more, but I get the context in which your life is in right now. It's very hard to see that. So trying to work with a lot of us, I can judge any person that ever came in, because I'm like, I was that guy too. I know exactly what that life was like.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Wow. Awesome. Are there any resources that will be tangible? You mentioned experts. Of course, we're going to talk a little bit about your practice and your course at the end. But are there any things that, I don't know, maybe a Netflix series or a scriptural verse, anything that you could think could, that families could rely on when they're going through a tough time?
I'm gonna try to keep this as short as possible, because I know sometimes I get animated talking about these topics. Okay. Pretty much any relationship topic, I'm like, I can talk about that. I can do that. So I'm gonna try to talk about a couple things. I'm probably going to leave some things out because my mind is just kind of sifting through it all right now. But I think one of the biggest things, if there was a resource I would ask people to really look at, it's going to sound kind of weird, it's that read, just get into audiobooks and just listen to an array of books. I listen to anything from Brene Brown to The Millionaire Next Door, Mine. I've listened to social justice, to a lot of different things. Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Like there's a lot of information that is out here, and what you would find is that the more you expand the way you think, the more you read about these different texts, and expand the way you think. And once you expand the way you think, it really shapes how you interact and life with your spouse too. And so there's a concept that I've learned that Malcolm Gladwell in Outliers was talking about, which he got from somebody else, but he was talking about the 10,000 hours. I think that's what it is. 10,000 hours of practice before you become very proficient at something. I can't remember who got it from. I think it was a psychologist. But to expand on that a little bit more, it says not only is it just 10,000 hours of practice, but 10,000 hours of effective practice. It's something will really teach you to be more. Now, there's some limitations to that, but obviously, like if I go outside right now, try to practice basketball, I will never be as good as, let's say, LeBron or anything. But when it comes to relationships, if I practice communicating over and over again, I get better. It also says, the implication is, if I'm only married for a year and I feel like, hey, you know what, this is not working for me, I get out, then you haven't practiced being married long enough to really get better at this. And so this is kind of a lesson that don't give up just because the first, 1,000, 2,000 hours of this is not really working for you. And a lot of times people want to give up on marriage. So expand it out a little bit more. Take more time. Don't give up. Go to counseling. Learn how to communicate. Practice communication skills. Practice setting your own boundaries. You have to do this consistently, become better at it. So that's just one thing that just reading. That's not even a book on relationships. It's just a book about outliers in society. But there's messages in that you can bring back to your relationship. So so that'd be one reason. Just read. Just I'll just read books like that. I read what's her name's Michelle Obama's book.
Becoming.
Great book. Great book.
Yes.
Recommend that to anybody who thinks that their relationship is difficult, or your spouse works too much, or you feel like as a woman you're giving up your identity to support him. I'm like, read it. It's a great way to really kind of look at perspective on relationships too. So
you mentioned something. I just want to expand upon it a little bit. It's audiobooks, right? Like
audiobooks,
Yes, because for the longest time, I thought that, I was like, gosh, how do people have time to read? Like, how do people get this stuff done? But like, it really is. Audiobooks has like changed, Audible. It has changed the industry for me. And it's like a prescription of 14 something. I didn't get paid to endorse them or anything, but 14 something a month. And you can get a certain amount of credits and you can get a new book. And I'm like, oh my gosh, when I'm dropping my kids off in the morning to school, when I'm going out, with my friends or doing drop up with the grandparents, I just have that on in the car and I'm done with the whole book in a week.
Yes, that's been a game changer for me. And I'll tell you, anytime somebody recommends a book, the first question I have is that on Audible? Is it on Audible? Can I find that? Because I'm driving consistently and but I like reading, I like getting new information. So I think being able to hear it while I'm driving is really, really helpful. So for those who find themselves to be very busy, like I'm busy with life, I'm busy with school, I don't have time to sit down and read a book. I get it. I don't
Yeah, exactly. And another thing you said too is great to do relationships and experts, but you can listen to fun things. You can listen to mysteries or documentaries or whatever, because all of that feeds your brain. It stimulates you and gets you thinking a different way about life.
Exactly. And even more so, now you have something else to connect with your spouse on. You can say, hey, this is something I read today. You can have a dialogue. And sometimes people feel like they have to go out and spend a whole lot of money to connect with their spouse. No, you don't.
And you can do it right here. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like read a book
a month.
Exactly. We can read a book together, we'll listen together, or we can listen and come back and talk about it, do our own little in-house book club. So, yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Any other resources that you can think of?
So that was definitely one. I would also say, if you do nothing else, some people say, look, I don't have time to read. I don't want to read, a book. I just want to, take the quickest way possible. I said, look, just take the 5 love languages quiz. So if you get an opportunity, go online, just type in 5 love languages quiz or 5languages.com. Put that in, take the quiz. And then something I like to have couples do is, after you see what your love language is, or what your top score is, because it's 5 different ones, write down on a sheet of paper, says, look, I feel most loved when, and then based on that love language for you, be very specific, and then just write that down. So that way now you kind of created a cheat sheet. Again, this costs you nothing at all. You just go online and take a test and almost create a cheat sheet.
I'm going to see if I can find that online and put that in the show notes. I've never done that, so I think that's awesome.
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome.
Resource right now. I could probably list more, but say, I don't want to take over the whole podcast talking about resources.
Oh no, no, not at all. No, we are really grateful for your feedback. You've got a lot to offer. I do want to shift our direction now into a segment of the show that we call What's Good. So What's Good is a part of the show where we apply this information into what would be a real life scenario for our listeners. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Meet Johnny. Johnny is a single African-American man who is 34 years old. He has a successful career as an entertainment lawyer and is in a jazz band that he works with on the weekend. While he enjoys his line of work and the life of an artist, he recognizes that he's missing something in his life. He wants a partner to share his life with and grow old with. The problem is, he's never had a stable relationship that lasted more than 6 months. He has a very active sex life and has slept with over 30 women in 1 month. He brags about that record often.
Wow.
Yet his previous girlfriend of 3 months dumped him because she said he was not emotionally available and was too quick to get angry. He dumped the girlfriend before that because he was cheating and did not want to keep lying. He fears getting into another relationship because he does not want to introduce the same pattern of behavior, but thinks if he gets professional counseling, it's a threat to his manhood. Do you have any advice for Johnny?
Wow. 30 days, like one.
I changed the name, but I do know a person who's been with 30 women in 1 month.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I hear a lot in this story, which I would want to explore with him to really understand what is the function behind a lot of what he does, because he's a very, very busy guy on one hand, and he stays and busy in a lot of ways. I mean, working, relationally, sexually. So he's so busy that there's something behind why he stays so busy. Which, I mean, even on the weekends, he works full time in the day. I mean, throughout the weekend, he's busy. Then he finds time for relationships, and then the point about him having not being emotionally present that jumped out. So. He doesn't want to come into counseling, which I could get. I don't even know how you fit it into his schedule, really. But what I would say is for him to really take inventory of really, and this is something it's almost like coaching, so to speak, but really to take inventory and say, look, when I look at who I am and my values, it's two things. For one, what do I value? As a man, like what really means to me, and then the other thing is, what is the legacy that I want to leave behind? And I think for him to really begin to envision both of those, like my values, obviously music is important. It sounds like I think you say he's a lawyer.
A lawyer, yes.
So those things seem to be there, but I almost wonder, and it sounds bad to put it in this context, but I almost wonder if the women that he's having these relationships with are being just used to help him cope with something else. Yeah. And so, in some way, he's actually using these females to not help him to become whatever his, maybe his purpose or his vision is for later on. So to really help him to really just sit down and say, look, what do I really want to do? Who do I really want to become? What's the legacy I want to leave behind? To really focus in on that. And I think sometimes him being as busy as he is, he doesn't get enough time to really focus and really bring that into a healthy picture that he can actually see. I think he's just kind of life kind of coping, and that could be very difficult for him.
Is there anything that could be done to get Johnny to take the initiative on getting help? Like maybe any stereotypes he might have that he needs to get past, or
Yeah, I think sometimes the idea that counseling undermines the manhood or the masculinity is oftentimes a challenging one to overcome. And I think for a lot of guys, that's just the nature of it. But there are also situations or opportunities where when males are able to, and this is in no way to make him become a better person, but I think sometimes when I can think outside of myself, sometimes if I'm attached to something bigger than me that says, hey, you know what, I'm of value to other people, somebody like John may feel better if he was, attached to maybe helping somebody else out. So if he was, a mentor for another, maybe perhaps a kid, or a mentor for another professional, but hey, you know what? That's something that really keeps me grounded. That's why I stay connected. And so sometimes that becomes the reason and the incentive to really make sure I'm good, so that way I can do it for somebody else. And so for him, I would say, you know what? It's to really help him really connect with something else initially, to help him realize that, hey, you know what? Me being connected and my life really mattering to, whomever or to whatever entity, now becomes even more reason to want to seek out help. And then the counseling at that point becomes more so, not even counseling, maybe it's just more coaching. Maybe he's not in he's not for counseling right now. He may be just in the place for coaching, and that may be what he needs initially. And then maybe through coaching, he can probably find out that, hey, you know what, maybe counseling may uncover some things.
Okay.
Some kind of road.
Very good. Very good. I like that. And I've learned that too by doing counseling and coaching. Sometimes people are just more comfortable with coaching. It's less of a stigma. We've had coaches our whole life in high school, on the sports team and in different areas. So I think, I love that. I love that.
Absolutely.
Well, Dr. Williams, I can't let you go without telling us all the work you do. So where can my listeners find you?
Sure. So I'm on... I'm all over the place. So
where can they find you to work with you, and then where can they find you online? How about that?
Sounds good.
Okay.
So for my website is www.coastalfamilyservicespllc.com. coastalfamilyservicespllc.com. So you can go there. That's where my website is. You can see some of my blogs, but also you can see my availability for doing counseling work. People can reach me there. I'm also on Facebook, so that's another place where people, for those individuals that feel like, you know what, I'm just not ready for counseling right now, I completely get it. That's fine. You can find me on Facebook under Coastal Family Services. Join the page. I put a lot of positive, inspirational information out.
Yeah.
So that way people can see it. And, some people, I've actually found that people connect through that page as well. They'll eventually want to come in for counseling. So that's another way. And then also a private group. It's not necessarily a private group, but it's called Thriving Love for New Lovers. It's also on Facebook. So, and that one is exclusively about couples work. So I put out information just to help people really think about couples, or I pose questions, just kind of generate some dialogue. And what happens is there's a community of other people in relationships, also chiming in and talking about their relationship. So it's another way of just being able to get out to people, to reach people, and to it's kind of free help. So we find on social media. So just always follow and take in some of the tidbits, take it back to your relationship, vet it to see if it works for you, and if it does, great, implement it. If not, then
love that. Now, let's go to Coastal Family Services real quickly. Now that's located in Fayetteville, but you provide counseling online, correct? Yes.
So I do online counseling by video, as well as in face to face. So
so and for also people who want to have that as a barrier, I just want to make it very clear: you don't have to come in the office.
Absolutely.
You don't have to drive all the way across the state. You can serve anybody in this state with that. without
Absolutely.
access. Okay.
Absolutely. So being that we are, counselors licensed in the state of North Carolina, I can see anybody in the state of North Carolina, as long as you're willing to be online, or you want to come see me and you live in Asheville, that's fine too. That's a long drive.
It's a long drive. Oh, let me just be clear. I don't know I hope it's okay if I ask this question, but are you in network with TRICARE? I
am. So I'm. I think being in Fayetteville, you just kind of have to be. So obviously, I am for this area. I don't see a whole lot when I work in the Cary location, but I see a lot more TRICARE in the Fayetteville area, as well as Military One Source. So so I'm on that panel, as well as Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Very good. Awesome. Very good. And last but certainly not least, that couples course, Soulmate Connections, Loving, Living, and Winning Together. Please tell our listeners how to find that.
So that course is also, and actually I put a link out on social media quite a bit. Okay. So I'll definitely, and I'll give you the link at the end.
Okay.
So that way we
can in the show notes.
Absolutely. We can still Google Soulmate Connections or Soulmate Academy by Eric Williams. It'll come up that way too. Right now the web page is still being designed, but the link is actually active. So there's a landing page.
Very good. So we'll make sure that we have that in the show notes. And I just can't thank you enough, Dr. Williams, for all the information that you shared with our listeners today. I can imagine it was very down to earth, and it's very refreshing to have someone who speaks like us, who looks like us, who acts like us, to have such amazing wisdom and feedback. So thank you on behalf of all of our listeners for coming and sharing your wisdom.
You know what? No problem at all. I'm just grateful to be here. I'm glad you started this platform. I'm happy to be a part of it. I look forward to doing future work with you.
Sounds great. All right. You take care.
Yes, ma'am. You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Black Marriage and Family Therapy Matters podcast, where we connect Black families to Black therapists. Since you've listened all the way through, come on in and join the family. If you haven't done so yet, please join our free community where we offer weekly trainings and monthly giveaways. We can be found on Facebook under the Black Marriage and Families Matter Facebook group. And since you're serious about joining our family, we also invite you to join our All In campaign, which signifies your commitment to go all in, not only for yourself, but in helping us reach more people by downloading this podcast wherever you are listening to it, leaving us a review, and subscribing to our YouTube channel. This really helps us reach more people and change more lives. After all, Dr. Martin Luther King once said, we can all get more done together than we can apart. With that said, I want to encourage you to share this episode with just 3 other people who you think might also benefit from our community and what we are offering, with the hopes that all of you can join our All In campaign. When you're done, simply click the link All In Campaign in the bio and receive a free copy of my course entitled Goodbye Toxicity, which is valued at $297. This course will help you to work through some of the difficult experiences that arise in most of our relationships, and it's completely free to you with your commitment to join our All In campaign. We look forward to connecting with you every Monday and Wednesday. Thanks for listening.